So let's select our cube here. Let's go into our geometry nodes tab and add a new geometry node setup. We'll press X to delete the input geometry because we'll add, using Shift A curve circle. And if we Alt Shift left click on that, we'll connect that to the group output. Now we can see this circle here. For now, let's change the resolution to 8. And on each of those points, we want to add a line. So Shift A and add a curved line. Plug that into the instance here. And now we need to do some aligning. We want these to radiate out from the center. And in order to do that, we need to sample this curve here, this curved circle. Shift A sample curve. And we'll plug this into the curve here. And we want to use the sample curve to affect the rotation so that basically, if we look at the top, can't see anything, but we want these lines to come out this way, like so. And we can use the normal to calculate what that rotation is. And all we need to do is bring in an align rotation to vector. We'll take the normal, plug that into the vector there, and take this rotation, and plug that into the rotation. Now we need to also plug in the spline parameters factor here and into the factor. So now we've got these lines radiating out from the center. And now what I want to do is I want to bend these around the center. In fact, let's change this radius here. So we'll bring these a bit closer. And these lines, they only consist of 2 points. And so we're not going to actually be able to bend these around like so. So what we can do is bring in a resample curve, bring that here, and I don't know, set it to 12 for now. So now there's actually 12 dots. There's 12 points along each of these lines. So with that, what we can do is bring in a set position node. And we want to take a vector rotate node. And using that rotation, we want to set a new position. But to calculate that, we need to take the current position of those points, and that'll be the vector. The center will be 0, 0, because that's the center for our original circle. And then what we can do is if we plug this into the position and change this angle, you can see that it starts to shift around. But it's actually shifting the entire instance. So what we'll need to do first is, we'll just hit escape to reset that angle. Let's bring the realize instances. And this promotes those lines from being, here if we mute this by pressing M, you can see we have these 8 instances. They're just instances, so it's just rotating the entire instance around that center. But if we promote this from an instance to control points, now we can bend all of those control points around the center. But in order to actually bend it, we need to bring in that spline parameter again. We'll select this one here, Shift D, bring it over here, and we'll use this factor, but let's pull in a math node with Shift A. And we'll take that factor, which goes from 0 to 1. I'm not sure actually which is 0 and which is 1, but as the curve increases from the start to the finish, that spline factor will go from 0 to 1, which is 0% or 100%. And we can take that and maybe let's just try pi for now, but we'll multiply. So the factor 0.51 times pi, and that'll give us some kind of angle. So there you go, there's our spiral there. And we can play around with the resolution if we wanted to make it a little bit smoother. We don't have to right now because we'll be distributing points along here soon, but for now, let's bump it to 24. I think I like the shape of that spiral, honestly. That's pretty nice. You can always give it more arms, but for now, let's leave it at 8 and see how that looks. So now you can't see it, but all these arms have several points on them. So maybe let's pull in an instance on points again. They disappear for now, but let's bring in an icosphere, and that will be the instance that we put on those points. Let's bring the radius way down, 0.01. That looks good. Subdivisions, I'm not sure. You can always tweak that later. But what I actually want to do is I want to scale these instances. And I want to scale them based on the spline parameter. Yeah, so this spline parameter here, let's Shift D it. If we take that factor and plug that into the scale, you can see that, okay, so it must be near the center is 0 and to the outside is 1. So let's Shift A and bring in a map range. And we can plug some of these numbers around. I want them to get smaller as they reach the end of the arm. So we'll just flip this to 1 and 0, so we reverse that. And then the 2 max, we can bring that up so that we get a bit more, so we get some bigger icospheres near the end. I'm going to bring that radius down just to bring those to the center even more. Something like that. So now let's tweak this a little bit more. We've got like uniform spacing pretty much as far as the points being spaced out. Let's try bringing this count up even further. So we give it even more, but then, and I wonder where I should put this. What I want to do is I want to delete, just randomly delete some of these points so that it's broken up. It doesn't look so it gives it a bit of randomness. I think maybe we'll try putting in a for each element here. And we'll connect this instances to the geometry and pass through that there, and the new geometry comes out here. And we need to change this to instances, I think. Let's bring a delete geometry here, and we want to delete a random selection, so we'll bring in a random value here. It's looking good. I can see that's breaking up. Each arm though has the same point being deleted, so let's pull in this index and put that into the seed. So now each arm has a different amount. Subtle, I don't want it too broken up like that. Let's maybe take a look further out here. That's looking pretty cool. We can give this resample a bit more. Maybe keep tweaking the probability a bit. Yeah, so I like that. That's broken up nicely. And for this this zone here, we can just Control G and then tab back out, and that just cleans it up a bit more. We'll call this like random deletion. Give it a fake user and make it a bit wider. Okay, so now let's bring in a join geometry node over here, and let's have a little section here where we're bringing a UV sphere, and this will be just the galaxy center. So we'll bring the UV sphere and we'll just join that geometry, and we'll set this radius to be something much lower there. And we'll play with the material here. Let's just bring in a set material for now. We'll get to the materials pretty soon, as well as the backdrop. Let's select these two, press Ctrl J F2. We'll name it Galaxy Center. And let's add a backdrop. Let's do, using this join geometry, we can bring in a grid using Shift A, and we'll join that into here. And if we go to the top, okay, so this is the front here. So let's rotate this using transform geometry, 90 degrees on the X. And we'll scale that quite a bit. That's just gonna be our backdrop. And we'll push that using translation into the distance there. Again, adjust the scale until it fills the screen. We'll set up the camera as well in a bit. But for now, let's distribute the points on faces on that grid. So now you get this star field in the background. And I think kind of the same thing, like instance on points. We'll do an icosphere again and connect that to the instance. We'll bring the radius way down, of course. 0.01 looks pretty good, but also that scale, let's do a random value again. It always connects it to a vector, so then let's change that to a float because I want these to be uniform scale. And I think like the max you can do, yeah, we'll bring the max up to like, I don't want them to be as big as the galaxy itself. I want them to be quite small. So the size, there's contrast in size. Min, let's bring that up to like 0.1 or something, just so they're not totally gone. And of course, you can always, where would that be? Distribute points. You can always change the density here to your liking, something like that. And I think that might be pretty much it. Let's select this here, Control J F2, and we'll call it Starfield. All right, so that's our node setup for now. Actually, one last thing, let's get a bit of space here. And this is the main line here for, we can like group all of this and call it Galaxy. Okay, so that's our galaxy there. What we can do is add another transform geometry, and let's bring in some rotation into this, because as we spin this on the z-axis, we'll see it start to maybe spin it this way. We'll see it's starting to spin around like that, and we'll animate this. We'll drive it with the scene time, and we'll use the frames. So this is a common setup that you'll see in more of my videos. We'll use the frame count, which down here is 250. And we'll pull in a math node, and using that frame, we'll divide it by 250. And so, whoops, and divide right here. So the frame being frame 1 divided by 250, that gives us a percent. So if we're on frame 250, 250 over 250 is 100%. That's 100% of our animation. So to make this loopable, we'll take that 0 to 1%, and then we will Shift D this and plug that percentage and multiply it by tau, which is 2 pi. And we only want this to rotate on the z-axis, so we'll combine x, y, z here. And the output of that we'll just put into the z and bring that vector into the rotation. So now if we hit spacebar, it's actually going the wrong way. Let's times it by negative tau. And there you go, there's our spinning galaxy. And to adjust the speed, you can always do, actually no, let's apply a driver here. So right click this, copy as new driver, and here in this divided by, these need to stay in sync, so we'll paste that driver there. So now as we adjust the frame, that actually just adjusts the speed of this animation. And it should be totally loopable, which it is. And you can check if it loops by going to the starting frame using Shift left arrow, and to the end frame using Shift right arrow, and then right arrow one more time, because that frame, which is one more frame past the end frame, should be the same as the start frame, and you can test that by going Shift left arrow again, and there should be no change. So that verifies that it is looping correctly. So now if we hit play, you get our spinning. And maybe what we'll do is select these and just call it spin animation. All right, so now let's start working on the materials. Let's do the materials and the lighting and the environment, that kind of thing, and start to get some color into this. So it looks really cool. First of all, we're going to need, I think, like 3 materials. One for the center, one for these arms, and another material for the stars. So let's give some space here because we'll need some set materials. So let's jump over to our shading, and we'll go to, let's actually do the camera. Let's select that, Shift G, Shift R, RX90, and then G and Z, Z, and then pull way back here. That's now our camera view. Let's jump back to geometry nodes, and let's pin this here so we don't just have to have it selected. And let's go back to this transform geometry. And we've got this vector here. We can start to, holding Shift, we can start to kind of offset this a bit, and maybe we should look at how it's composed in the camera view. For that pie menu, you just press tilde, and then you can do view camera like that. And let's just give it a bit of angle here. And maybe for the camera, let's grab that and let's move that around a bit more just to compose that shot just a little bit, like so. I think that's pretty good. Okay, let's go back to the shading tab here. Click here, and what we're going to need is, we're going to need 3 materials. So let's do a new material in slot 2, and slot 3 we'll do a new material, and we'll call this core. Actually, let's do slot 1 here. We'll call this core, call that one Starfield, so that we can call this one core, like that. And then slot 2 we'll call arms, like so. Sorry for jumping back and forth here, but now let's go and select these materials. Let's do a Shift D. This is the galaxy center, so we'll call it the core. And this line here, set material, we'll call this the star field. And Shift D, that set material, and call that the arms. All right, now let's go to shading, and let's do rendered here. We've got this light, which is giving it some light right now. So let's just turn that off for now. We'll probably add a couple lights later. Let's set this color of the background. Actually, let's just take this away, I think. Let's just remove that so we get nothing and it goes dark. So let's start with the core. This we want to be just an emission. We'll give it, I don't know, strength of 100 or something like that. And we don't have any bloom. So let's drag out in the corner there. Go into the compositor. Let's give us a bit more space here. Press N to hide that, and we'll click Use Nodes. And it's super zoomed out. A quick way to zoom in is tilde frame all, and it'll bring it right to the front there. And then Shift A to add a glare node. This is just your classic 4. I think this is 4.2 when it came in. In this viewport here, we'll have to go to Always to show compositor. So now we've got streak set. So let's do a fog glow and high quality and size. We'll maybe come back and tune this later. Change this mix around, something like that. Okay, so that's the core. And let's do the arms really quick. Let's just give this very quickly some kind of color with an emission of, I don't know, 50. So So there's our arms, and we're kind of jumping around really quick just to get some color and light in here, but we'll tune these in just a moment. And the star field, same kind of thing. We'll do, I don't know, like 10 maybe, because we want those to be pretty dim. And we'll change that to be not so bright. But I also want, I don't want pure white. I want like kind of a blue. I don't see much blue there at all. Oh, that's the base color. My bad. Let's change this to be kind of blue, like a cooler background. Oh, we're gonna have to fix that. Yeah, we'll have to fix that. Okay, so one thing I want to do with the arms here is using the geometry nodes. We can now go into the render view here. So using this, so in geometry nodes, we have that, the spline factor here. And we're gonna need to make a bit of room here. What I want to do is be able to access this spline factor on the geometry within the shader. So I think we can just add a store named attribute. I'm trying to think where this needs to go. We'll store this factor here and we'll call it spline factor. And let's try the point. Let me think about this actually. Okay, so I actually moved that store named attribute to be right before we realize the instances, because I know that right now we have curves, we have splines. And before we convert those to control points to bend around the center, I want to capture that spline factor. So if we jump back to the shading tab, we should be able to pull in, using Shift A, we should be able to pull in an attribute node here. Shift A, attribute, and let's give it the name spline factor to access that value that we stored. And I'm just kind of crossing fingers that this works, so that when we pull in this factor and plug that into the color, I don't think it's working at all. Oh, maybe it's on the instancer. It looks like that is actually working. Let's see, 0. Okay, so 0 we determined was near the center. So we'll just have to, like, we don't have to flip it. We can do like a warmer color in the center and then a cooler color near the outside. We can make it cooler faster if you want. This is all customizable however you see fit. And using the same factor, we can bring in a math node so that we multiply that factor 0 to 1. Multiply that to get, well, we got strength 50 here, so let's do 50 here, so times 50. And maybe 2, I don't like the look of that. Let's zoom in here. Let's pull in a float curve so we can kind of tweak this however we want. So it's like really bright. This should fall off a bit. Yeah, so that, you get some fall off there. Really, this is just kind of like, flip that around. I think that's looking pretty good. I'm just gonna try tweaking some things here. I like that. Change that emission to 1000, so that's really strong. And I kind of want to give it one more stop here and give it like an orange, something like that. All right, so pretty basic shader, driven by this spline factor that we captured. I don't like the star field in background, so let's select that here, and let's give it, I think the stars are definitely too large right now too though. So let's go back. Let's give this a bit more color. Do warmer, cool. I think cool usually recedes into the background. Yeah, I kind of like the orange. It's kind of like a brownish. I don't want super bright, but I do want some brightness there. Okay. Okay, so now let's go back to the geometry node. We'll need to do the bloom here as well, so that we see the compositor. Let's change the scale of those stars in the star field. Where is the star field? There you go. You can Control F, Command F, and then start typing. I named this frame star field. So then if you type that in and hit enter, it'll jump straight to it, which is super handy when you start getting like a complex node graph here. This guy here, these are just way too big. Yeah, that's a lot better. And we can try like bring up the density. No, that's a bit too much. Maybe 60-ish. Now what we did, we actually changed these. Let's zero those back out so that we can spin it. And let's try something here. Shift D this, reset the Z here. And what happens if we like change just the X and Y here? Cool, yeah, it stays spinning. It doesn't go off axis like it was doing before. So, okay, I might change, I'm just making some small tweaks here now. I might change the radius, that galactic center, and there's a bit of a gap right there. Again, this isn't like a scientific, this obviously isn't a scientifically accurate galaxy. It's just kind of artistic. Okay, I think we're pretty much good to start setting up rendering this. Let's go into our render tab up here, drop down to color management, and let's change the look from, I wish you could see the difference in real time here as I hover over. So I'm going to control and then mouse down, actually mouse up, just to start to see the effect of this look. I kind of like that one. Very low contrast. Let's go back to the compositor here and wonder what happens if, let's like give it a bit more mix. Yeah, I like that, so that there's a lot more glow around the galaxy. And then too, we can Shift A and bring in a hue saturation value node. And let's play with the saturation a bit. I want to try bringing in a contrast. What we can try actually is this environment. If we go to the world tab here, go to volume and then change that to principal volume. Let's bring this density down quite a bit. Maybe like that. I'm not sure how I feel about that yet, but let's bring this light back in here. And where is that light anyway? All right, we're back. For some reason, it stopped, the recording froze. That was weird. It was still recording, but it wasn't capturing the screen. A little hiccup there. I just want to give some color. I just want to give some color to the space. So if we get like a, ooh, yeah, yep, liking that. And let's Shift D that light and bring it down to this corner, and maybe adjust the radius there. And we'll give that, I'm just kind of playing around like a teal. That's kind of nice too. Just some variety. Like plain black is just so boring. Let's move that around. Gives us a bit of teal in the corner. This, I'm gonna make it just a bit more purple. All right, let's compose this a little bit more. Take the camera, G, and we'll move that. Kind of thinking like rule of thirds-ish. So it's not like dead center. Maybe like, yeah, maybe like that. Now, I just noticed this arm has quite a gap right here. So let's go back to where we delete that geometry. Let me zone in here. Let me zoom in here. We've got this random deletion, and inside that group, we've got this seed. But what I want to do is bring in a math node here. And I want to take that seed and plug it in here, and then plug that value into the seed. And we'll add some number. So if we click this group input and press N, we see this value, and it's a float. We want that to be just a integer. And we'll call this, double click it to call it a seed. And then if we tab back out of that group, we've got the seed here. So now we can actually, from outside the group, some of these have like really big gaps. Maybe too, then we can like bring this count up a bit. The icospheres, they do look kind of boxy. So where are the icospheres? Here we go. There's our 0.05. Nope, 0.01. Okay, so those are a lot rounder now. Let's actually render out this animation. So that's the speed that it's spinning. Maybe let's slow it down. I like that better. So maybe 700 frames. And that reminds me, let's go to this, I think it's output. Change the frame rate to 30 FPS. So it's a bit smoother. So that's rotating smoothly. And to render it, we will change this to be an FFmpeg video. And the encoding, we can do, yeah, Matroska's fine. H.264, perceptually lossless. And I'm going to save it to my temp directory. Frame start 1, end on frame 700. And then we can go up to render and render animation.